I found it fascinating as I was reading Romans 1. A lot of people like quoting Romans 1 as kind of like an anti homosexual thing. And it is. It's speaking against humanity's lack of love for God. And what's interesting is that in chapter 2, he says, now, I'm going to condemn you guys because you profess to know God. And you're accusing these people of being nasty homosexuals. But he says, let me remind you where you came from. You did not come from holy seed. You came from the world that we all live in. And your responsibility towards another human being is not to point the finger at them, but to point the finger at you. Forget them. God will judge them as he sees fit. All of that to say that when we like throwing rocks at other people, we like condemning them because we're living better than they. It's kind of like in 2 Corinthians, it talks about the fact that they comparing themselves amongst themselves are morons. Why? Because you're using a gauge, a go-no-go gauge that's made by human beings. So how can you tell who's going to go or not go to heaven? Because you've made that gauge, and it's according to your standards. But the standards that really matter are God's standards. So he lets people into heaven. Why? Because they are good? Because they impress him? No. That's not the case. God is not impressed with your behavior. God is impressed with your commitment. I mean, because this is what this is all about. We are not made perfect because we walk right. We're made perfect by one thing and one thing alone, and that's the blood of Christ, period. So it's not your good deeds. It's not looking good, smelling good, having the right haircut, not combing your hair in the morning. That's your standard. But we don't live according to our standards. We live according to God's standards, which are a little bit bigger than ours. Simply because God is a little bit bigger than we are. His standards are a lot better. So I am not comparing myself to somebody else based on my standards. And no. So when you live your life, watch where you point your fingers. You would much rather point your fingers at yourself and be vindicated by God than point your fingers at others and be damned by God. Just saying. Be wise.